Ladies and gentlemen, fear. It is a feeling that has held countless people back from achieving their dreams, from pursuing their passions, and from becoming the best version of themselves. Yet, what if I told you that fear is a lie? That it is not an unstoppable force, but rather an illusion our mind creates to keep us from stepping into the life we were meant to live. Today I want to show you why fear is a lie, and why taking action is the only way forward. Fear. It is one of the most powerful emotions we experience, yet it is also one of the most misunderstood. Every one of us has felt it. It sneaks into our minds quietly at first, like a shadow at the edge of our awareness, and then it grows, spreading doubt, hesitation, and uncertainty. But what if I told you that much of the fear we feel is not real? What if I told you that fear is often an illusion created by our own minds, a trick our brains play on us to keep us safe, but in the process, it prevents us from growing, from achieving, and from becoming the people we were meant to be? Think about the moments in your life when fear has held you back. Maybe it was the fear of failure that stopped you from starting a new project, launching a business, or pursuing a dream. Perhaps it was the fear of rejection that made you silent when you wanted to speak up, or the fear of the unknown that made you stay in a job, relationship, or situation that no longer served you. These fears, though they felt real, were exaggerations. They amplified risks that were often much smaller than our minds imagined and painted obstacles as much larger than they truly were. Our minds, while brilliant, have a tendency to dramatize potential threats and downplay our ability to overcome them. The brain is wired to protect us. Thousands of years ago, fear was a survival mechanism. It warned our ancestors about lions, wild animals, and dangerous environments. Fear helped them survive. But today, the lions are no longer chasing us. Our modern fears are rarely life-threatening in the literal sense. They are fears of judgment, failure, uncertainty, and discomfort. Yet our minds respond to them as if they were life or death situations, flooding us with anxiety, doubt, and hesitation. The result is that we are often paralyzed by imagined threats that exist only in our thoughts. Fear exaggerates danger in two major ways. First, it focuses on what could go wrong instead of what could go right. When we consider taking a risk or stepping into something new, our minds automatically highlight the worst-case scenario. What if you fail? What if they laugh at you? What if you lose everything? And in doing so, fear creates a false sense of reality, convincing us that the worst outcomes are inevitable and unavoidable. But these outcomes are rarely certain. Most of the time, the reality is far less extreme than our fear makes it seem. The mind inflates problems, magnifies risks, and convinces us that standing still is safer than moving forward. Second, fear underestimates our strength, resilience, and ability to adapt. It makes us believe that we are smaller, weaker, and less capable than we truly are. It whispers that we cannot handle challenges, that we are not prepared for failure, and that we are destined to falter. But time and again, human beings have proven that our capacity to endure, learn, and grow is far greater than we imagine. When we confront fear, we often discover inner resources, creativity, and courage we never knew existed. Fear prevents us from realizing these strengths by keeping us trapped in inaction. The consequences of allowing fear to dominate our lives are profound. Opportunities slip away unnoticed, relationships remain unfulfilled, and dreams fade because we never took the first step. Life becomes smaller, limited by the boundaries that fear imposes. We tell ourselves stories about why we cannot, why we should wait, why we are not ready. But these stories are not truth. They are fabrications created by fear itself. The only way to separate reality from illusion is through action. When we act despite fear, when we take steps forward even when our minds are screaming caution, we begin to see the truth. We begin to understand that fear is not an unmovable barrier, but a challenge to be faced, tested, and overcome. Consider for a moment how many great achievements in history began with someone choosing to move forward despite fear. Every innovation, every breakthrough, and every accomplishment started with a person confronting an unknown, stepping into discomfort, and challenging the story that fear had written. Imagine if they had listened to fear. The world would never have seen the first flight, the first scientific discovery, the first work of art, or the first moment of change that inspired millions. What stands between ordinary people and extraordinary success is often nothing more than a lie. The lie that fear tells, that action is too risky, that failure is inevitable. Ladies and gentlemen, the lie of fear is persuasive because it feels real. It triggers physical responses in our bodies, racing hearts, shallow breaths, tense muscles. It convinces us that inaction is safer than progress, but the reality is the opposite. Fear keeps us small, prevents us from learning, and stops us from experiencing life fully. The antidote to this illusion is simple, yet powerful: action. Each time we confront fear, even in small ways, we dismantle its power. Each time we take a step forward, we weaken the false narrative that fear has written in our minds. The more we act, the less convincing fear becomes, until we see it for what it truly is: an illusion. The next time fear arises, remember that it is not a prophecy, it is not a prediction, and it is not an unchangeable truth. It is a story your mind is telling you, a story meant to protect, but often at the cost of your growth and happiness. Recognize the lie, acknowledge it, and then move forward anyway. Take that step, speak that word, make that call. Begin that project, start that journey. Because the moment you act despite fear, the illusion shatters, and the reality of your potential shines through. Courage is one of the most celebrated qualities in human history. We admire it in heroes, leaders, inventors, and ordinary people who achieve extraordinary things. But courage is often misunderstood. Many think that being courageous means never feeling afraid, as if brave people are immune to fear. Nothing could be further from the truth. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is the decision to act despite fear. It is the choice to move forward, to speak up, to try, and to risk failure even when your heart is pounding and your mind is screaming doubt. Understanding this distinction changes everything about how we approach our lives and the challenges we face. Fear is a natural response. It is a signal that we are entering the unknown, that we are stepping outside our comfort zone, and that we are about to grow. The most courageous moments in history were not those in which fear was absent, but those in which fear was present and acknowledged, and yet action still occurred. Courage is a conscious choice. It is a decision to act when every instinct is telling us to run, to stay safe, or to wait. Every person who has ever achieved greatness, every person who has ever made a difference, has felt fear. The difference is that they did not allow fear to stop them. They acted in spite of it. When we think about our own lives, we often wait for courage to magically appear, as if some inner switch will turn fear off and suddenly give us bravery. But courage does not work that way. Courage is not spontaneous or effortless. It is deliberate. It is choosing to take one step forward, to speak one word, to make one phone call, to start one project, even when doubt threatens to paralyze you. Courage is cultivated through action. Every time you take a step despite fear, every time you act in spite of hesitation, you strengthen your courage muscle. The more you practice, the stronger it becomes. Consider how often fear convinces us to do nothing. It whispers, "You're not ready, you'll fail, what if it goes wrong?" These thoughts are normal, but the most courageous people recognize that fear is not a signal to stop. It is a sign that something important lies ahead. Fear indicates opportunity. It indicates growth. Every time fear rises, it presents a choice. Allow it to control you or act in spite of it. Courage is the choice to act. It is the willingness to move forward, even when the outcome is uncertain. It is the understanding that inaction is far more dangerous than action, because inaction leads to regret, missed opportunities, and a life of what-ifs. We often think of courage as grand acts, standing up to a bully, fighting for justice, climbing a mountain, or giving a powerful speech. But courage is not limited to dramatic moments. It exists in daily life, in small decisions, and in quiet actions. Choosing to speak your truth, choosing to try again after failure, choosing to pursue a dream despite skepticism. These are all acts of courage. Every courageous action, no matter how small, reinforces the truth that fear does not have the power to control you. The act itself, the decision to act, defines courage, not the absence of fear. Courage also transforms fear. When you act despite fear, something remarkable happens. Fear begins to lose its grip. What once felt overwhelming starts to feel manageable. The racing heart slows, the tension eases, and doubt is replaced with confidence. Each action taken in courage chips away at the power of fear. The more you act, the more you realize that fear is temporary, and the capacity within you to overcome it is permanent. Courage creates momentum. It turns hesitation into movement, doubt into determination, and fear into fuel. History is full of examples that illustrate this truth. Every leader, innovator, and changemaker experienced fear, but they acted anyway. Imagine the first person to step onto an airplane, to speak out against injustice, or to invent something no one else believed was possible. They felt fear, their hands shook, their minds warned them of danger, but they acted anyway. Courage is always messy, uncomfortable, and imperfect, yet it is always transformative. Courage is what separates those who live lives of potential from those who remain trapped in fear. Ladies and gentlemen, the decision to act despite fear is not just about achieving goals or making history, it is about living fully. Fear will always exist in some form, but courage allows us to live with purpose and intention. Courage teaches us that fear is not a stop sign, but a challenge. It teaches us that the power to move forward lies within us, not in the absence of difficulty or risk, but in our ability to make choices even when we are afraid. Courage is a practice, a habit, and a mindset. It is developed each time we confront fear and refuse to let it dictate our actions. Courage also inspires others. When people see someone act despite fear, it ignites something within them. It reminds them that fear is not permanent, that hesitation is not inevitable, and that they too can act. Courage spreads, not because of loud speeches or grand gestures, but because of example. Every choice to act despite fear sends a message. Fear exists, but it is not stronger than your will. Courage is contagious because it is real, human, and attainable. So, remember this. Courage is not the absence of fear. It never will be. Fear is a natural human response, but it does not define you. What defines you is your decision to act in spite of it. To move forward when you want to retreat. To speak when you want to stay silent. To try when you want to quit. Every courageous decision builds confidence, resilience, and momentum. Every courageous choice reveals the truth, that fear is temporary, but action is permanent. Courage transforms not only your life, but the lives of those around you, creating a ripple effect that extends far beyond a single moment. Fear has a way of convincing us that standing still is safer than moving forward. It whispers in our ears, urging us to wait, to hesitate, and to stay within the boundaries of what we already know. And while fear may disguise itself as wisdom or caution, the truth is far more sobering. Inaction fueled by fear is one of the greatest thieves of human potential. Every moment we allow fear to dictate our choices, every opportunity we let slip away because of doubt, brings with it the quiet weight of regret, missed chances, and dreams left unfulfilled. Think for a moment about the opportunities you have let pass in your life. Perhaps it was the chance to speak up when your voice mattered, to start a new career, to move to a new city, or to express your feelings to someone you care about. The reasons for hesitation are always compelling. Fear tells us that the timing isn't right, that we are not ready, or that we might fail, and so we do nothing. But the irony is clear. Waiting for the perfect moment often means the moment passes without notice, leaving only what might have been. Fear does not protect us, it traps us, creating invisible walls around our lives that prevent us from exploring the full extent of our abilities. Inaction is dangerous because it erodes potential. When we hesitate, we rob ourselves of the chance to learn, to grow, and to discover what we are truly capable of. Every action, even if imperfect, carries with it a lesson, a step forward, a building block of experience. When we do nothing, we deprive ourselves of these vital opportunities. Our confidence diminishes, our goals drift further away, and the gap between who we are and who we could be widens. The life we imagine in our minds becomes a distant dream, all because we allowed fear to define our actions. Regret is the natural companion of inaction. There are few things more painful than looking back on your life and realizing that you had the power to change your path, to chase a dream, or to take a risk, and yet you did not. Regret is a heavy burden, heavier than failure, because failure teaches and challenges us, while regret leaves us with nothing but the knowledge that we could have acted, but chose not to. Fear convinces us that inaction is safe, but in reality, doing nothing often carries the greatest risk of all, the risk of never knowing what could have been. Missed opportunities are another consequence of inaction. Life is a series of moments, each one offering choices, chances, and possibilities. When fear stops us from acting, opportunities vanish, sometimes forever. The person you could have become, the success you could have achieved, the experiences you could have embraced, all remain unrealized. Opportunities do not wait for hesitation. They pass quietly until the next one arises. And even then, it is never guaranteed that the next chance will be better than the one you ignored. Acting despite fear ensures that you at least participate in the unfolding of your life rather than being a passive observer. Fear-driven inaction also limits our vision of what is possible. When we refuse to step forward, we reinforce self-doubt, telling ourselves that we are incapable, unworthy, or ill-prepared. This mental pattern becomes self-perpetuating. The more we hesitate, the more convinced we become that fear is justified, and the more likely we are to remain trapped. By contrast, taking action, even in small steps, disrupts this cycle. Action builds momentum. It expands our sense of possibility, strengthens our confidence, and proves to us that fear is not an absolute truth, but a temporary state to be confronted and overcome. Consider the countless stories of individuals who regretted not taking action. They are everywhere. People who dreamed of starting a business but never tried, students who hesitated to speak their minds in class, artists who never shared their work, travelers who never explored the world, and countless others who were paralyzed by fear. Their stories remind us that inaction is not a neutral choice. It is an active decision to let life pass by. Each day we postpone our dreams, fear tightens its grip, and our potential diminishes. Every moment wasted is a reminder that the greatest risk is not the possibility of failure, but the certainty of never knowing what we could have achieved. The antidote to this danger is simple, yet not always easy: action. To break the cycle of fear-driven inaction, we must decide to move, even when the path is uncertain. Start with small steps if necessary. Speak up when silence is easier. Take one step toward a goal. Make one call, send one email, apply for one opportunity. Take one action that moves you closer to your dreams. Each step erodes the power of fear, replaces hesitation with momentum, and turns potential into reality. Action, even imperfect action, is far more valuable than the illusion of safety created by waiting. Every great achievement in history began with someone refusing to be paralyzed by fear. Someone chose to act despite uncertainty, despite doubt, and despite the risk of failure. That choice made the difference. Action transforms life from a series of missed chances into a journey of discovery, growth, and accomplishment. It is through action that we learn our limits, test our strengths, and expand our horizons. Without action, potential remains unrealized, dreams remain abstract, and life becomes a story of what might have been rather than what was. When it comes to overcoming fear and achieving our dreams, the solution is often simpler than we imagine. It is not always about grand gestures, dramatic leaps, or heroic feats. True transformation, real growth, and lasting courage come from small, consistent actions taken day after day. These actions may seem insignificant at first, barely noticeable in the grand scheme of things, but over time, they accumulate, build momentum, and change everything. Taking small steps is not a sign of weakness, it is a sign of wisdom, determination, and resilience. Fear often paralyzes us because it magnifies the distance between where we are and where we want to be. It convinces us that the goals we have are too big, too challenging, or too risky. When we look at a major objective, such as starting a business, writing a book, or changing careers, the size of the task can overwhelm us. Our minds focus on everything that could go wrong, every potential failure, and every obstacle that might arise. The result is hesitation, procrastination, and inaction. But the key to overcoming this fear is to break down the seemingly impossible into achievable steps. By focusing on small, consistent actions, we make progress manageable, and we slowly but surely diminish the power of fear. Consistency is what creates change. One small action may seem insignificant, but repeated consistently, it becomes a habit, and habits shape our identity. Each step forward is proof to ourselves that we are capable. Each action is evidence that fear does not control us. Over time, this accumulation of small victories builds confidence. Confidence does not come from thinking positively alone or waiting for motivation to strike. It comes from doing, from acting, from proving to yourself repeatedly that you can handle challenges, take risks, and achieve progress. Each small action is a brick in the foundation of courage, resilience, and self-belief. Small actions are powerful because they create momentum. Momentum is the force that keeps us moving forward even when fear returns. When we act, even in minor ways, we disrupt the cycle of hesitation and doubt. Momentum begins with one step and then another, until fear loses its grip. It is remarkable how small, simple actions compound over time. Writing one paragraph a day results in a book. Saving a little money each month builds wealth. Exercising a few minutes each day transforms the body. Each small choice is proof that action, not fear, defines the path forward. Fear diminishes when it is confronted regularly. Each small action is an encounter with fear, a test of courage. When we act consistently, we become accustomed to the discomfort that fear produces. We learn that fear is not a wall that cannot be broken, but a signal that we are stretching ourselves, growing, and moving toward something meaningful. Small, repeated actions desensitize us to the paralysis of fear. They train our minds to focus on progress, solutions, and possibility instead of potential threats and imagined failures. What once seemed terrifying becomes manageable, and what once felt impossible becomes achievable. There is also a profound psychological benefit to consistent action. When we act, we produce evidence of our capabilities. Fear thrives on uncertainty and doubt, but consistent action provides proof of competence and resilience. Each task completed, each challenge faced, each small victory reinforces the truth: I can do this. I am capable. Fear may still exist, but its power diminishes because it no longer defines our reality. Confidence grows quietly, steadily, like a river eroding a stone over time. By taking consistent action, we turn fear into a temporary companion rather than a permanent barrier. Consider the lives of people who have achieved greatness. Rarely do we see someone succeed overnight. What we see is years of small, deliberate, consistent actions. Thomas Edison did not invent the light bulb in a single attempt. He experimented thousands of times, each failure a small step forward. Writers write one page at a time. Entrepreneurs build businesses one decision at a time. Athletes train daily, often in small increments, until they achieve mastery. The lesson is clear: small, consistent action is the engine of success, and fear only diminishes when confronted repeatedly through action. Small actions also reduce the fear of failure. Fear often tells us that a single mistake will ruin everything, but when we focus on consistent progress, failure becomes less intimidating. Each step is an experiment, a learning opportunity, a chance to adjust and improve. By taking small actions, we create a pattern of forward movement that reduces the stakes of each individual step. Fear loses its power when we recognize that progress, not perfection, is what matters. Each small action is a victory over hesitation, a confirmation that even in uncertainty, we can move forward. Another important aspect is that small, consistent actions build momentum not only for personal growth, but also for resilience. Life will inevitably throw challenges and setbacks in our way. The fear of failure, disappointment, or loss may arise again and again. But when we have practiced consistent action, when we have experienced the compounding effects of effort, we are stronger, more prepared, and more resilient. Our ability to respond to fear with action becomes ingrained, almost automatic. We are no longer paralyzed by doubt because we have trained ourselves to move forward one step at a time, even when the path is uncertain. Ladies and gentlemen, the path to confidence, courage, and success is rarely dramatic. It is not built on occasional bursts of inspiration, nor is it achieved by waiting for fear to vanish. It is built on small, deliberate, consistent actions taken every day. Each action weakens fear, strengthens confidence, and moves us closer to the life we want. Each step may seem minor, but over time, it becomes unstoppable momentum. Fear diminishes not because it disappears, but because it no longer controls us. Action becomes our natural response, courage our habit, and growth our constant companion.